My wife, who had cancer, left behind a company with billions of debts. On her deathbed, she told me that she couldn't clear the debts and that taking the company public was her eternal regret. She hoped that I could fulfill her last wish. I loved her deeply, so I devoted myself completely, working day and night for 3 years, finally fulfilling her wish. But on the day the company went public, my wife, who had passed away, appeared with her new husband at the scene. She publicly accused me of murdering her for money and taking over her and her husband's assets. In an instant, I went from being the highly anticipated rising star of the business world to a pariah, the most hated man. Only then did I realize that everything was a scam. My wife had faked her death to escape the debts. Now that the company was flourishing, she came back to claim it. Upon discovering the truth, I didn't argue or make a scene. I returned the company to her and wished her and her new husband a lifetime of happiness. She thought that regaining the company would secure her success, but little did she know, the true core technology was still in my hands. Without me, the company would collapse again, and she would face massive debts along with a lifetime in prison. Chapter 1. What rising star, Vincent? You're just a murderer. At the press conference, while all the journalists were praising me, suddenly someone in the audience shouted loudly. I followed the direction of the voice and saw my wife, Fiona, who had been dead for 3 years, standing in front of the cameras, tearfully accusing me. The crowd murmured in confusion. The journalists recognized Fiona and rushed to her with questions. Fiona, you've been missing for 3 years. Your husband worked tirelessly to pay off your debts, barely sleeping. He managed to turn the bankrupt company around and get it listed. Such an outstanding rising star in business, how can you call him a murderer? Who did he kill? In the crowd, Fiona stood in a white dress, her fragile figure almost as if a breeze could blow her over. He doesn't deserve it. He's a hypocrite. A freeloader. I married him against my parents' wishes, gave him a job, gave him money, and what did he do? When my parents died, he forged my cancer diagnosis, wanting me dead so he could inherit everything. I froze. Our marriage had been arranged by my father-in-law and mother-in-law. They valued my talents and wanted me to marry into the family. But Fiona never accepted the marriage arranged by her parents and was always resistant. After we got married, she was worried I was after her family's wealth and constantly guarded herself against me. Not only did she prevent me from advancing in my career, but my salary was also half compared to others. Our relationship had always been tense. It wasn't until my in-laws passed away and the company went bankrupt with debts of over $1 billion that all her former friends turned their backs on her, while I never left her side. That's when she realized how much I cared for her and started to change her view of me. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. After just 1 month of sincere interaction, she was diagnosed with brain cancer and passed away early. I held her as she breathed her last and personally handled her funeral arrangements. But now, the woman who had died suddenly reappeared and accused me of murdering her. Seeing that I didn't respond, Fiona didn't let up and continued her attack. Vincent, you must be surprised to see me alive, right? If my husband hadn't discovered the truth and transferred me to another hospital, your devious plot would have succeeded. What husband? Wasn't I her husband? And besides, after she died, I cancelled her ID, and on my household register, it still says I'm a widower. I was about to speak when Fiona brushed past me and walked over to my assistant Jack. In front of everyone, she took his hand affectionately. This is my current husband, Jack. If it weren't for him staying close to Vincent for 3 years, I would have never known that Vincent had set up the company's collapse. All his so-called deep feelings were fake. His only goal was to take over my company. The whole scene erupted in anger, with people cursing me for being hypocritical and disgusting. I looked up at her. When I took over, the company was already bankrupt. It was you, before you died, who told me that if the company didn't go public, you would never rest in peace. That's why I persisted. After she left, numerous big companies offered me opportunities. But I didn't want her to die with regrets, so I turned down every offer. To keep the struggling company afloat, I worked day and night, humbled myself, begged for help, and pushed my own potential to the limit. Finally, I paid off her debts and successfully got the company listed. I thought, after I die, I could finally face her with dignity. But before I could even search for her, she returned with someone else. I watched as she held Jack's hand, my heart torn to pieces. Fiona handed me a share transfer contract. I'm alive and well. Are you still wishing for my death? Vincent, sign the contract. For the sake of our past marriage, I won't hold you accountable for the harm you've done to me. Looking into her cold eyes, I couldn't believe that the wife who once swore eternal love to me had become so indifferent and ruthless. I thought maybe she had been deceived, or perhaps the brain cancer had affected her memory. Desperately, I asked, "Fiona, are you sick?" At my words, Fiona laughed as if she'd heard the funniest joke, her laughter shaking her body. But what she said next made me feel like I was falling into an ice pit. "Vincent, you're so stupid. I was just pretending to be sick, and you actually believed it. Anyway, I have to thank you. If you hadn't managed the company so well, I wouldn't have had enough money to buy a house for Jack and travel around with him." I smiled bitterly. She faked her death for 3 years, only to return and set me up, forcing me to step down. Every day I worked hard for her, she was spending it with another man. The company I painstakingly built up was just a tool for them. My efforts over these 3 years seemed like a joke. Fiona stood there, looking victorious. I looked at the cameras still rolling around us and smiled. "Aren't you going to keep pretending? Aren't you afraid your hypocrisy will be exposed?" I couldn't make sense of it. It was her who caused the ruckus at the press conference. It was her who publicly revealed the truth. Fiona, hearing my words, covered her mouth and chuckled. She then gently waved her hand, and all the reporters in the room lowered their cameras. Fiona looked at me with disdain. "Of course, I've got all the material I need. No need for me to act anymore. Vincent, do you see it now? This is the power of money. I suggest you behave and hand over the company, or you'll end up in a very ugly situation." It turned out all the reporters had been hired by her. No wonder they cooperated so well earlier. I knew arguing was pointless. I signed the transfer agreement. As soon as I signed, she eagerly grabbed the contract, looking like she'd won big. Little did she know, the company was just a shell. The real value was in my technology. Without me, all the projects would collapse. At that point, she wouldn't only face massive penalties, but also prison time. Chapter 2. After Fiona took the contract, she went over it repeatedly, ensuring there were no loopholes. Only then did she smile at me and say, "You're smarter than I thought." She dismissed the reporters, and the atmosphere in the room instantly became cold and quiet. Fiona came in with such a fierce attitude that I knew she wouldn't show me any mercy. Just as I was about to quit and head to my office to pack up, Jack suddenly pointed at me and said, "Fiona, I want his position as CEO. Is that okay?" I stopped in my tracks and looked at him. He had worked with me for 6 years, and I would sometimes mentor him. But he had no talent for this kind of work. No matter what project he was given, he messed it up. That's why everyone else got promoted, but he was still just a small assistant. "Of course, that's fine." Fiona immediately agreed, then looked me up and down and criticized. "Vincent, you're actually wearing a casual t-shirt to work instead of a suit. As a senior executive in the company, you're leading by breaking the company's dress code. I'm informing you now, you're fired. Pack your things and leave." I had already expected that I would be fired, but I hadn't thought it would be for such a ridiculous reason. But it didn't matter. The excuse didn't matter, the result was the same. Earlier, when I was stripped of power, no one said a word. Now, as I was about to be fired, even Fiona's secretary couldn't hold back and spoke up to advise. "Chairwoman, Vincent is not just the CEO, he's the company's technical backbone. Without him, all of the company's projects will collapse." At the mention of this, Fiona sneered, lifting her head proudly. "There's no one who can't be replaced. Right now, what we need most is talent. Vincent, you were just lucky. You rode the wave of the times. Otherwise, with your incompetence, how could you have achieved what you did today? Jack has the same expertise as you, and he's a PhD graduate who studied overseas. He's far more capable than you. If it weren't for you always holding him back and not giving him a chance, he would have soared by now." I just smiled in response. She was making things too simple. Back when the company's cash flow had dried up, and we were developing unimaginative trend-following products, the company collapsed almost overnight. I stayed up countless nights, bringing in new products for research, and spent a month blocking one of the main clients downstairs in the office building just to secure an opportunity. Once we started, I worked diligently, personally overseeing every project, reviewing every step, ensuring no mistakes. With such efforts, we earned a good reputation in the industry, attracting more clients, and the company regained its former glory. But to her, all my hard work and efforts were nothing more than being lucky enough to ride the wave of the times. Jack, in a good mood from all the praise, turned to Fiona and said, Fiona, if it weren't for him framing you back then, with your talent, maybe you would have led the company to the top 10, and you would have been on the Forbes list by now. At his words, Fiona shot me a resentful glance, as if all her failures were somehow my fault. If that's how she felt, then I wished her success. I picked up the pen and signed the termination letter. The secretary, seeing she couldn't stop me, didn't try to persuade me further. She just sighed and said, "Your severance pay will be issued once the finance department has processed it." I had been involved in all of the company's major projects, and the amount was substantial, so it would take some time. I nodded and was about to head to my office to pack my things. But Fiona suddenly changed her expression and shouted at the secretary. "Severance pay? He's the one who delayed the company's development, and he has the audacity to ask for severance pay? Deduct his salary for this month, and make him pay the company $1 million in compensation. If he can't afford it, don't let him leave. He can stay on as a janitor to pay off his debt." Chapter 3. The colleagues who had been watching the scene gasped in surprise. I had worked diligently for the company, living at the office day and night. All of my salary had gone back into the company, and I hadn't had a decent meal or worn new clothes in years. In the end, not only was I fired, but now I owed the company $1 million. "Well, then let's just sue." I sneered and turned to leave. During the past 3 years of rapid development, I had expanded my network and gotten to know a number of prominent figures in the legal world. At first, I didn't want to pursue anything regarding my dismissal. I was willing to let things fade away. But now, Fiona was pushing me too far, trying to drive me into the ground. If that was the case, then I'd settle both the old and new grievances and get back what she owed me. I hadn't gone far when Jack suddenly stepped in front of me, blocking my path. "Since you don't want to pay, let's try a different approach. How about I beat you 100 times to pay off your debt? One punch for 10,000. Sounds like a good deal, huh?" Fiona's eyes lit up, and she clapped her hands, praising him. "Good idea. Vincent, you can choose, pay up or take the beating." I raised an eyebrow, thinking they were just joking. "Beating people is illegal. Aren't you worried about landing in jail?" Jack seemed a bit hesitant, clearly not as excited about the idea. He lowered his hand. Fiona, however, smiled and looked around the room. "The cameras here are broken. Whoever wants to be my witness, I'll give you 10,000 each. No cap." At her words, some colleagues eagerly shouted. We all saw it. Vincent wasn't happy about being fired and is making a scene. He even injured himself trying to claim medical compensation. What a shameless person. As they echoed Fiona's words, she wore a triumphant smile. I looked at the employees joining in the mockery with a bitter smile. These were all people who had worked with me for years, the ones who had been with me when the company was at its worst. Back then, their performance had been poor, and they should have been fired. But they came to me, begging, saying they had families to support and that without a job, their families would starve. Having worked together for so long, I was soft-hearted and kept them on. When they couldn't complete a task, I'd step in to help. When their families were in the hospital, I'd cover the medical bills. I never once thought of asking them for anything in return. But I never imagined that despite showing kindness to them, I would end up abandoned by everyone. While I was lost in thought, Fiona took the opportunity to slap me across the face when I wasn't paying attention. Feeling the sharp pain on my cheek, I looked up at Fiona. I couldn't understand why she hated me so much. She had taken everything from me, but now she seemed determined to drive me to the point of no return. Even if I had given so much for her, or even if I were just a stranger, this still wasn't the way to treat anyone. After the slap, Jack immediately cradled Fiona's hand in concern and volunteered. "Fiona, it must hurt to hit him. Let me do it instead. I promise your $1 million will be well spent." Fiona rubbed her sore wrist and smiled. "All right then, I'll leave it to you. Just don't kill him. Leave him breathing." Jack grinned and nodded, rushing over to throw a punch at my stomach. The pain forced me to bend over, and my stomach churned, nearly vomiting up my breakfast. Before I could recover, Jack grabbed my arm and hit me again. "Remember, this punch is for Fiona. It's all your fault that she's in this situation." I struggled to fight back, but after years of overwork and neglecting my health, I couldn't compare to his fitness. I finally managed to grab his hand, wanting to fight back. But Fiona noticed my movement and called over a few people to hold me down. At this point, I had no chance of fighting back and was completely reduced to a punching bag. Jack kept punching me, one blow after another, and I curled up on the ground, numb to the pain. If this kept up, I'd be dead for sure. As I thought about how to seek help, the receptionist suddenly burst in, shouting, "Stop! The client is here. They're at the door." Fiona froze, then immediately stopped Jack from taking another swing. "Stop. Go wash the blood off your hands and change into a clean suit. This time, I've replaced Vincent with your design. The client must be very satisfied with your work, that's why they came all the way here to meet with you." Jack was overjoyed when he heard this. "Thank you, Fiona. I'll work hard to assist you and make the company bigger and stronger." Fiona watched Jack leave to tidy up and then turned her cold eyes to me. "Now you've seen how capable Jack is, huh? Still look down on him?" I couldn't speak due to the pain. But I didn't need to guess. With Jack's level of skill, I was sure the project had failed. And now the person in charge had come to hold them accountable. All the clients I had worked with for years would have come directly to me with any issues. This time, they probably couldn't reach me, which is why they had come to the company. What Fiona didn't realize was that she was mistaken. She thought the client was here to praise her. As the person in charge walked in, sure enough, it was someone I knew. He saw the crowd and didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked at me with a stern face and said, "Vincent, we need to talk about the project. Just the two of us." Fiona raised an eyebrow and pushed Jack forward. Vincent was fired for a serious mistake. "This is our new CEO, Jack. The project you'll be reviewing is his design, so please take care of him moving forward." The person in charge paused, then realized what was happening and angrily shouted, "I knew it. There's no way Vincent could have produced such trash. We lost 500 million because of it. You've replaced him without authorization. This is a serious breach of contract. From now on, all our future cooperation is terminated, and you'll have to compensate us for all our losses. See you in court." Chapter 4. What? When the project manager spoke, Fiona thought she had misheard. She turned to Jack and quietly asked, "Didn't you say that your abilities have already surpassed Vincent's, that he always held you back and wouldn't give you a chance? Now that I've given you a chance, what does this mean?" Jack's face turned pale. "Fiona, Vincent and the client have such a good relationship. He must have known about your plan and conspired with the client to set you up and get back at you." Fiona believed him, casting a resentful glance at me before turning to the project manager with a smile. "Is there some misunderstanding? Vincent is such a deceiver, please don't let his lies cause us to lose such a good partner." The company was very well known in the industry and didn't lack clients. Fiona assumed everyone was interested in the company itself. Little did she know, these clients only wanted to work with me. As the manager continued to listen, he grew angrier, not giving Fiona any face. He coldly snorted. "What misunderstanding? If it weren't for Vincent, a small and struggling company like yours wouldn't even be worthy to work with us." Ignoring Fiona's ugly expression, he crossed his arms and asked me, "Vincent, what's going on? How did you get pushed out?" Despite the pain, I forced myself to speak. "Lou, please call the police." The client, Lucas, had been my longtime acquaintance, and our relationship was solid. He hadn't noticed anything was wrong until he heard me speak. Fiona, thinking I'd obey as I used to, panicked when I asked to call the police. "You should go to the hospital if you're sick, stop wasting police resources." Lucas ignored her and immediately made the call. Jack, who had been so confident earlier, now looked nervous and tugged at Fiona's sleeve. "What should we do, Fiona?" Fiona hesitated for only a moment before regaining her composure. "What are you afraid of? He fell on his own, how can we be blamed? Everyone here will testify for us, right?" Seeing the colleagues who had supported her earlier begin to waver, I remained silent, waiting for the police to arrive. When the police finally came, I explained the situation to them. Fiona continued to argue. Jack even played his part. "He must have injured himself somewhere, now he's misunderstanding us. It's such a shame the cameras here are broken, otherwise, we would have recorded his ugly face." I laughed and pulled out my phone, which had been recording the entire time. "Well, let me satisfy you. You want to expose my ugly face? Go ahead." I had suspected this might happen, so I had turned on the voice recorder before they started their scheming. When the entire conversation was played back, Fiona and Jack's faces changed drastically. They cursed me for being despicable and using dirty tricks. I didn't know where they got the nerve to say such things. They had framed me first. I was only defending myself. When the words Fiona had said were replayed, the police officer's expression shifted. Have you watched too many soap operas? Are you out of your mind? Even if someone makes a false testimony, we can still find the truth from injury assessments and nearby surveillance footage. Fiona was thoroughly scolded, and Jack turned pale, regretting his actions. The police detained them, and as Fiona was being led away, she gave me one last resentful glare. Vincent, dare to fight me? You wait for it. After the police had dealt with them, my former colleagues who had betrayed me awkwardly stepped forward to apologize. Vincent, we were left with no choice, don't hold it against us, okay? Yeah, it's all that woman's fault. You know how it is, we have families to support, how could we oppose her? Seeing them return to their submissive ways, I smiled faintly. It's fine. I don't hold a grudge against you. Just as they were relieved in trying to earn my forgiveness, I pulled up a list on my phone and started reading names. Domi, last year your mother had cancer surgery. I covered $10,000 in medical expenses. Time to pay up. Ali, last month your daughter was hospitalized for acute gastroenteritis. You borrowed $2,000 from me. As I read out the names, their faces turned white as they stammered. Vincent, my family's in trouble, can we pay you back later? My family is really struggling, I spent all my money. I'll pay you back next month. I simply waved my hand. Don't waste your breath. If you can't pay, I'll see you in court. Hearing my cold response, they showed their ugly sides once more, grumbling. Such a miser, it's just $2,000, why can't he wait to get it back? It's not like we won't pay. Exactly, no wonder his wife left him. I ignored their slander and followed Lucas downstairs. Lucas drove me to the hospital, and on the way, I told him everything that had happened. He was truly taken aback. Your life story is like something out of a drama. But now that you've been fired, what's your plan? We invited you to join us a long time ago, but you kept saying you wanted to stay loyal to that crappy company. Now that it's no longer yours, how about joining us? I shook my head, appreciating his offer. Thanks, but I want to take a break for a while before making a decision. He expressed regret but said he was still looking forward to future cooperation. After some tests and a few days of recovery at the hospital, I was finally cleared to go home. But as I reached my doorstep, I saw my belongings being thrown out. People were still carrying out my things, and my cherished figurines were being tossed and broken. Fiona stood arrogantly at the door, looking down at me. How dare you come back after getting Jack detained? I stared back at her. I warned you before, hitting someone is a crime. You still went ahead, and now you're facing the consequences. Fiona's face turned red with fury. She stamped her foot. If you hadn't called the police, none of this would have happened. How laughable. I was the one beaten, and I'm wrong for defending myself? I shook my head, no longer bothering with her. I started filming the scene. You've broken into my home and damaged my property. I'll take this to a lawyer, and you'll pay for it all. Chapter 5. Fiona's arrogant demeanor was immediately interrupted, leaving her stunned. She turned her head and sneered, speaking disdainfully. It's just a bunch of junk, what's there to compensate for? Don't think I don't know. You're broke now, who would even want to work with you? Stop trying to scare people. You should be thinking about how to apologize to me, or else, I won't let you have an easy time. I didn't pay her any more attention. There was no point in reasoning with a madwoman. I would leave everything to the lawyers when the time came. The house was occupied by him, so I found a place to stay. That night, I received several calls from my clients. They had heard that I was kicked out of the company. Now they were all scared and wanted to break their contracts with Fiona. After all, they had come to cooperate with me. Now that my name was gone, and Fiona had already messed up when she took over, they didn't dare to continue working with her. Fiona watched as contract after contract was returned with breaches. She was almost exploding with frustration. The most important part was that every contract had a clause stating that if the project leader was changed, the second party would take full responsibility. This meant they only recognized me, and changing the person would be a breach of contract on Fiona's part. She couldn't understand what was so special about me. But seeing the increasingly urgent messages from her secretary and the mounting debts in the company, she finally couldn't hold back and called me. When I saw the unknown number, I picked up. To my surprise, it was Fiona's voice on the other end. Vincent, I don't know what kind of spell you've cast on these clients, but they all insist on working with you. You need to come over right now and help me fix this mess, or I'll release the video from the press conference. You wouldn't want your reputation damaged, being pointed at for the rest of your life, would you? Now I understood why she had set up a trap at the banquet. It was all just a threat for this very moment. It seemed like she hadn't released the video yet. But even if she did, I didn't have anything to fear. She knew the truth better than I did. Her words were full of holes and couldn't hold up under scrutiny. Do whatever you want. I hung up again and blocked the number. Fiona, unable to reach me, became frantic. In a fit of rage, she released the video and even paid a bunch of marketing accounts to promote it. Soon enough, she had painted me as a Phoenix man who killed his wife. Right after, my private messages were flooded with insults. I contacted my lawyer friend and handed everything over to him. He was extremely efficient, immediately releasing the video where Fiona had exposed herself on social media, and the situation flipped in an instant. Fiona was way too arrogant. She thought she could buy off reporters, so why did she think others couldn't do the same? And then she dared to expose herself. Now, not only had the situation reversed, but my lawyer also filed a lawsuit against her for false accusation, defamation, malicious dismissal, property damage, and more. Fiona had tried to frame me and get me bullied online, but in the end, she shot herself in the foot. The only person being attacked online was her. She couldn't even go out without facing public scorn. I spent my time recovering while planning for the future, while Fiona was busy dealing with one crisis after another, whether it was clients canceling contracts or poor company operations. Now she realized that what her secretary had warned her was true. Without me, the company was doomed to collapse. As the debt piled up, she couldn't hold back anymore and came to find me herself. Vincent, I was deceived by that bastard Jack. He told me you were the one who was trying to ruin the company. I was confused and listened to his lies. Now I know the truth. Can you forgive me? Chapter 6. She looked into my eyes with a gaze full of tenderness, as if she had returned to the way she was when she was critically ill. That was the most beautiful time in our lives. I nearly gave up my own life for that fleeting happiness. But in the end, everything was a lie. The marriage was a lie, the love was a lie, and even her death was part of the scheme. I knew her apology now was nothing more than fear that she might lose everything again, which was why she came to me seeking sympathy. But I would not be foolish enough to believe her again, to help her. I pulled out my phone and smiled at Jack on the other end of the line. You heard that, right? This is the girl you're protecting by taking the blame for everything. When she got into trouble, she thought only of abandoning you, pushing all the blame onto you. To put it simply, Fiona didn't love anyone. She only loved herself. When Fiona saw Jack's name on my phone screen, she was so shocked that she stood up immediately. Her disguise was instantly torn away, and she stared at me angrily, ready to scold me. But then, as if she remembered the project situation, she had to hold it in. Well, if it came to that, she could try to smooth things over later. She had been very generous to Jack over the years, never treating him badly. It was just about making him a scapegoat to get through this tough time. He wouldn't mind, right? Fiona thought this to herself and continued speaking, dumping all the blame on Jack. 3 years ago, I really was diagnosed with brain cancer, but the doctor misdiagnosed it. Then Jack told me that you were the one who sabotaged the family. I was scared, and that's why I believed his lies. We faked my death to set up a situation, trying to get back everything I had lost. At that moment, Fiona lowered her head in a fake show of grievance, as if she too had been deceived. If she had said this earlier, I might have actually believed her. But now, I just snorted quietly. Fiona's acting was really impressive. It was a shame she hadn't gone into show business. On the other end of the line, Jack finally couldn't hold it in any longer. He burst out laughing bitterly. Fiona, you really are a heartless person. You didn't just lie to him, you lied to me too. You didn't want to pay your debts, you were scared and wanted to hide, so you asked me to help you set all this up. Stop pretending to be innocent and pitiful. Haven't you been living happily these years? If Vincent hadn't built the company so well, and you were jealous and wanted to take it back, you'd still be sunbathing on the beach. Fiona's face turned pale, and she yelled that he was talking nonsense, then started exposing some of Jack's dirty secrets. Watching these two people tear each other apart like wild dogs, I just smiled and stayed silent. Jack, his eyes bloodshot from anger, started spilling more details. Vincent, there's one thing you don't know. The reason she hates you so much isn't just because she's afraid you're after her money, it's because... Just as Jack was about to reveal something crucial, Fiona screamed and abruptly hung up the phone. Actually, I was curious. I had no enmity with Fiona. I had been taking care of her family and the company, and had always been very considerate toward her. So where did her hatred for me come from? Right in front of me, Fiona awkwardly changed the subject. Don't listen to that kid's nonsense. He's just trying to ruin our relationship. I don't hate you at all, I'm just a bit slow to warm up. As she extended her hand toward me, her gaze intense, I silently withdrew my hand. Fiona, don't waste your effort. I will never forgive you, and I will never help you again. You probably still don't know why these clients were so quick to breach the contract with you. That's because I've been tipping them off. No matter how much she begged, it was useless. I was going to make her pay an even steeper price for the grievances I had suffered over these past 3 years. Fiona stared at me in shock. She didn't expect that I had been the one behind all this. She angrily questioned me over and over, making sure I wouldn't help her again. Finally, in a fit of rage, she slammed her hand on the table. Fine, Vincent. I tried to reason with you, but you wouldn't listen. You want to oppose me? Just wait. See what kind of outcome you'll get from fighting with me. As I watched Fiona walk away, I couldn't help but wonder what kind of retribution she would face. But this woman was so crazy that I had to stay vigilant for my own safety. Before she could try to sabotage me again, she found herself deep in debt once more. I didn't let up either. During her toughest time, my lawyer paid her a visit to demand compensation. After I had finished with these arrangements, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, to my surprise, it was Jack standing there. Jack looked at me and said, Vincent, you're actually the third party here. I was speechless, not sure what he was trying to say. Jack gave a bitter smile and began telling me about his relationship with Fiona. That's when I found out they had been together a long time ago. But Jack was younger than Fiona and came from a less reputable family, so Fiona's parents didn't approve of him and forcibly separated them. Fiona was heartbroken, and even went so far as to search for him. Fiona's parents, afraid she would run off with this bad boy, quickly arranged for me to marry her instead, pushing me into the marriage. Fiona had resisted the marriage at first, but her parents cut off all her financial support, and she couldn't bear it, so she broke up with Jack and married me. Although she married me, she never stopped contacting Jack. In fact, Jack only managed to go abroad for studies because Fiona paid for it. When Jack returned to the country, she immediately arranged for him to work at the company, just so they could see each other every day. No wonder Jack was always competing with me, trying to surpass me. It wasn't just jealousy, it was because of his relationship with Fiona. Now I finally understood why Fiona hated me so much. She was forced to part with her first love, and couldn't blame her parents for pampering her, so she vented all her anger on me. She always liked to blame others. Whenever things went wrong, she would fantasize about a road she never took. Fiona thought she could manipulate everything. But before I even saw her retaliatory tactics, she was sent to prison by my lawyer. When my lawyer investigated her, he uncovered some illegal activities, and they sent her straight to jail. Hearing all this, I wasn't surprised. Her arrogant, lawless personality must have caused victims to give in to her threats, which only made her behavior worse over time. The past was the past. I let go of my hatred, declined the job offers from various companies, and started a business with my friends.